Follow me! Enemy troop! Enemy activity. Do you need a medic? Quick. Do you copy? Medic!
Enemy forces! Enemy forces! Enemy forces! Go! Enemy forces! Enemy forces! Enemy infantry! Enemy forces spotted!
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces! Enemy snipers spotted! Enemy forces!
Requesting ammunition. Over. Requesting ammunition. Over.
UAV transmitting.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over.
Enemy
Requesting ammunition.
Enemy forces spotted! 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 Enemy infantry! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy sniper spotted!
Go!
Enemy forces spotted! Enemy infantry! Enemy infantry!
Enemy forces. Move it! Enemy activity. Enemy units on the move. Activity. Do you copy?
UAV transmitting on
I need a medic here!
Enemy forces spotted! Infantry! Enemy forces spotted!
Over.
Enemy infantry spotted! All clear. Enemy infantry
I
spotted!
need a medic here! Hostile 44 spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Supplies at your position.
Enemy
forces spotted! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy forces spotted!
Follow me, we need ammo. How about some help go on ammo? Do you? Sniper!
Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted!
Good deal. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry.
Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy spotted! Enemy forces!
Enemy troops identified. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted!
Snipers on our perimeter.
Enemy sniper
forces spotted.
Enemy forces!
Good deal. Enemy spotted. Over.
Spotted!
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted!
Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted!
Medic!
Enemy infantry spotted!
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted!
Enemy forces spotted. Over. Hostile sniper spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted!
Hostiles on the ground.
online and transmitting.
Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted!
Medic. Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Medic.
Medic!
Enemy sniper spotted! Enemy infantry spotted!
Deal. Thanks. Sniper.
Enemy
Sorry, man.
infantry
Hostile
spotted!
infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry!
Enemy
Enemy infantry! Enemy forces spotted!
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy snipers! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy snipers! Enemy infantry! Enemy infantry spotted!
No way, man. Enemy troops identified. Good deal. Thanks.
Enemy forces spotted! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy forces spotted!
Enemy units on the move.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy snipers on the perimeter spotted! Enemy infantry
Hostile
spotted!
sniper spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted!
Sorry, man. Good deal.
Enemy infantry spotted! Enemy infantry forces spotted! Enemy forces spotted! Enemy Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Enemy units on the move. Hey, enemy units on the move. Sniper.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
I need a medic here.
Supplies at your position.
Hostile infantry spotted. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy infantry spotted. Forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. All clear.
Enemy units on the move. Do you copy?
Good work.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Running dry.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Need ammo. Over. A bingo on ammo. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic. Medic. Good deal, thanks. Enemy forces. Over.
Clear! All right! Grenade, go!
Sniper.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Get ammo here! Grenade!
Enemy
Hostile
infantry
forces
spotted.
spotted. Over. Thanks.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Medic. Enemy bolt spotted. Sniper.
Supplies at your position.
Thanks, Jim.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy? Medic. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Some help over here. Enemy activity. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Need ammo.
Medic.
No way, man. Enemy spotted. No way. Enemy boat spotted. No way, man. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy water vehicle spotted. Move out. Enemy units on the move. Thanks.
Enemy forces
Enemy
spotted.
activity. Do you copy? Sniper. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy units on the move. Sir. Enemy activity.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces.
Enemy troops identified. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Help over here. Thanks.
Online and transmitting.
Enemy boat.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Requesting a medic. We need
Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
medic. Enemy boat spotted. No, sir. No way, man. Medic to this position. Medic. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy units on the move. Enemy forces reinforced.
Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted.
I need a medic here. Sniper requesting reinforcements.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops reporting medic. Requesting a medic. Over. Enemy units on the move. Good deal. Enemy forces. Over. Medic. Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops.
All clear.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Hey, thanks. Roger that.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Help over here. Enemy troop. Hostile medic. Let's move. Hostile forces over. Medic! Enemy troops identified. Enemy forces over. Good deal, thanks. Enemy forces over.
Enemy infantry
over. Medic.
spotted.
Move it! Enemy forces over!
Transmitting on this mark.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Sorry, Chief.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Sniper!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Okay. Enemy forces over. Enemy forces over. Units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Move it! Move it! Sniper! Go! Hostile enemy units on the move. Enemy move it! Hostiles on the ground. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Infantry spotted.
I owe you one. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you
Enemy
copy?
sniper
Hostile
spotted.
sniper spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy
Over.
infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces. Medic. Hostiles on the ground. Medic. Enemy troops. Enemy troops identified.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over. We need support.
Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces. Hostile sniper spotted.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy snipers on our
Enemy
perimeter.
sniper spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry
Hostile
spotted.
forces spotted. Over. Enemy boat spotted. Hostile enemy troops identified. Over. Copy. We need support. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy forces. Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? How about some help over here? Enemy boat spotted. Enemy boating. Enemy forces. Over. Snipers on our perimeter. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy
Enemy
troops.
sniper spotted.
Sniper. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy forces.
Good deal. Thanks. Thanks.
UAV
I owe you one. Enemy
transmitting.
activity. Do you copy?
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Go!
Supplies at your position. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Online and transmitting.
Enemy infantry spotted.
How about some help over here? Thanks. I owe you one. Thanks. I owe you one.
Position cleared and under control.
I need a medic, quick. Medic! Enemy boat spotted. Medic!
Live, buddy!
Medic!
Transmitting on this mark.
Medic!
Kumbula! Throwing frag! Kumbula! Throwing frag!
Enemy boat spotted. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Right out! Grenade!
Enemy water vehicle spotted. Enemy boat spotted.
Enemy
water vehicle
Enemy
spotted.
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy spotted. Enemy Affirmative. Let's
Enemy
move.
unit on the move.
Damn it,
Hostile
sorry.
forces.
Hey,
Over.
thanks.
No, sir. Enemy activity. Do you copy? I owe you one. Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Cleared and under control.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy spotted.
Need ammo?
Sniper!
Frag out!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Frag out! Get ammo here! Ammo
Hostiles on the ground. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy activity.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Sniper!
Enemy forces. Enemy
troops identified. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Enemy forces. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Online and transmitted.
Enemy troop! Enemy troop!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Sniper! Enemy troop!
We've lost control of an outpost.
10-4. Good
Enemy
deal.
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Okay. Attack this position. We need support. Enemy unit on the move. Follow me! Enemy unit,
All
follow me!
clear. Position under control. Out.
Okay.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces, over. Follow me! Enemy forces,
Enemy
over.
infantry spotted.
Enemy infantry. Enemy units on the move. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy troop. Hostile infantry forces, over. Spotted, over. Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy infantry
units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Snipers on the perimeter. On the ground. Hostile infantry spotted.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Sniper! Sniper! Hostiles on
Enemy
the ground.
infantry
Support,
spotted.
copy. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troop!
Good deal, thanks.
Hostiles
Enemy
on the
infantry
ground.
spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Cleared and under control.
UAV online.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile infantry.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Identified. Do you copy? Enemy units on the move. Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Thanks. Thanks, Jim.
No one. Transmitted.
I read you.
Enemy
Well done,
requesting
thanks.
ammunition. Over. Thanks, Jim.
UAV online and transmitted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troop.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy boat spotted. Requesting ammunition. Over. Running dry. Need ammo. Over. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Jim. Snipers on our perimeter.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
No one.
Thanks, Jim.
Online and transmitted.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy boat spotted. Damn it, sorry. Enemy units on the move. Enemy forces spotted. Over.
supplies at your position.
We need support. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? 10-4. How about the enemy unit on the move? Enemy troops, enemy forces. Over. Cleared. Enemy forces. Over. Thanks. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Move your men to these coordinates.
UAV online.
Enemy boat spotted. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy boat spotted. Enemy infantry forces. Over.
Enemy infantry
I know
spotted.
you want. Thanks. Enemy troops identified. Enemy unit on the forces. Enemy forces. Over.
Get ammo! Get ammo here!
Enemy boat spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy boat spotted.
ذلك غير ممكن. حاضر. شكرا. أدين لك بواحدة. بسرعة. تحركات الأعداء، هل تسمعني؟ لك ذلك. حاضر. ظهرت قوات قارب للأعداء. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك حتى الأعداء. قارب للأعداء. قارب للأعداء. قارب للأعداء. قارب للأعداء. قارب للأعداء. وحدات الأعداء.
حول. يوجد تحرك على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟ صفقة جيدة. شكرا. تم التحرك على سرية الأعداء. تم التحرك على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟
كذلك.
يوجد قناص قوات الأعداء. حول. قوات الأعداء. تم التحرك على سرية الأعداء. تسمعني؟ تحرك بسرعة.
طائرة بدون طيار تعمل. بدأت الضغط.
شوهدت قوات الأعداء. شوهدت الأعداء على الأرض. قناص من الأعداء.
على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟ تم التحرك على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟
قناص من الأعداء.
تم التحرك على سرية الأعداء.
قناص من الأعداء. قناص.
الطائرة بدون طيار.
حول. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟
ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء.
تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟ تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
شوهد قناص من الأعداء. شوهد قناص من الأعداء.
يوجد قناص في المنطقة.
تحركات الأعداء.
قوات الأعداء حول. قوات الأعداء حول.
شكرا. أدين لك بوحدات الأعداء تتحرك. شوهدت قوات الأعداء.
ظهرت قوات الأعداء حول.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
ظهر جنود الأعداء.
تم
ظهر جنود الأعداء.
التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟ حول. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعني؟ تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. تم تسمعني؟
ظهر جنود الأعداء. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. 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 Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy spotted. Go. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces
Requesting ammunition.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Transmitting on this mark.
Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy infantry spotted. 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 Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy trooper.
Online and transmitting.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Over. Enemy troops identified. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy
troops
infantry
identified.
spotted.
Do you copy? Hostile forces spotted.
Enemy infantry
identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces over.
Enemy infantry infantry spotted. Losing this battle. Start fighting or I'll find someone who can.
On this mark.
Enemy Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Follow me! Enemy troops!
Transmitting on this mark.
Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you
Enemy
copy?
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Medic.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces over. Enemy forces over. Enemy forces over. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted.
Transmitting on
Medic.
Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
Good deal.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted.
Medic.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
أحضر سقط
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Sniper.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
ammo here.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces
Enemy
spotted.
troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted.
Position cleared and under control. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy forces.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
All clear.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Under control. Enemy units on the ground. Hostile forces. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Over. On the ground. Enemy units on the move.
Get ammo here.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy forces
spotted. Enemy
troops identified. Do you copy?
UAV
Enemy
transmitting
sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy forces. Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV offline.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces. Enemy forces. Enemy forces.
Over. Enemy forces. Over.
Online and
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Get ammo here.
Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Medic.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper. Enemy forces. Enemy lost control of an outpost.
Do you copy?
Enemy forces, enemy infantry.
Hostile forces, over.
Enemy forces,
over.
enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces,
over. Enemy troops identified.
enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy activity.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops identified.
Enemy forces. Enemy infantry spotted.
Over.
Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry.
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy
Over.
spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy unit. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Over. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy hostile
Enemy
infantry.
forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces.
Requesting reinforcements. Over. We need reinforcing. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground.
Position cleared and under control. Hostile forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry
Enemy forces spotted. Spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Infantry spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted. forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces. Enemy
forces. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV transmitting on this line.
Enemy forces spotted.
We're taking hostile spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Roger that.
Enemy forces spotted.
UAV
Hostile
transmitting.
forces spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy spotted.
Enemy forces
spotted.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Sniper!
Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troop! Enemy units on the move.
We've lost enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy
activity. Do you copy?
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy snipers. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy units on the forces.
We've lost enemy forces. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile forces spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy spotted. Enemy spotted.
Enemy troops identified.
Enemy forces spotted.
Outpost is being overrun.
We've lost
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces
Hostile
spotted.
infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces spotted.
Negative. Enemy activity. Hostile forces spotted. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV transmitting.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops. Enemy units on the move.
Enemy forces
Hostile
spotted.
infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy snipers spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy forces. Enemy infantry spotted.
Spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy forces. Over. Enemy troops identified. Spotted. Over. Enemy
Spotted, spotted.
Enemy troops.
Enemy infantry. Spotted, spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy helicopters spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Sniper spotted.
UAV is no on fuel. Transmission ending.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Transmitting on this mark.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy troops identified. Hostile forces spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Sniper!
Enemy APC spotted.
Enemy units on the move. Medic. Hey, thanks. Roger that. Hostiles on the ground.
UAV online and transmitting.
I'm bingo on ammo. Do you copy? Hostiles
We've
on
lost
the ground.
control of an outpost.
Enemy troop! Enemy troop! Enemy troop!
Grenade!
Hostiles enemy troops identified. Enemy units on the move. Enemy troop!
UAV is no on fuel. Transmitting.
Medic! Enemy activity. Copy. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy troop!
Clear! All right!
Good deal, thanks.
Frag grenade!
We've lost control of an outpost. We're losing this battle. Start fighting or I'll find someone who can.
نحتاج اسعافات نووية.
سريع للأعداء. قناص من الأعداء. القائد الجديد في الخدمة. شوهد الأعداء.
صار بدون تيار تعمل بدأت البث.
سريع للأعداء. ظهر جنود قوات الأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء.
صار بدون تيار تعمل بدأت البث.
ظهر جنود قوات الأعداء. قوات الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء.
جاري البث.
وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. أحضروا المسعف. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء.
تسمعوني؟
وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. هل تسمعوني؟ أقيم لك بالواحدة.
الإسعافات الأولية نحتاج.
شكرا أيها البطل.
جاري البث
تحرك بسرعة.
جنود الأعداء على الأرض. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. تسمعوني؟ ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة
تم الاستيلاء على التجهيزات. ذلك غير ممكن. سريا للأعداء.
علم.
سريا للأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء.
سيار تعمل بدأت البث.
وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. لك ذلك. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. جنود الأعداء. آسف سمير. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. ظهر جنود الأعداء.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون سيار.
وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. سريا للأعداء. التجهيزات صارت في موقعك. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. شوهد قناص من الأعداء. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. شوهدت قوات الأعداء.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون سيار.
سريا للأعداء. تحركات وحدات الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهدت الأعداء من الأعداء. جنود الأعداء على الأرض. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. تحركات
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون
نحتاج إلى دعم. هل تسمعوني؟ وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. شكرا. أقيم لك بالواحد هنا. شكرا أيها البطل. جنود الأعداء على الرجال. وتحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
جاري
تتحرك.
خطة جيدة. شكرا. ظهرت قوات الأعداء. حول.
تحركات للأعداء، هل تسمعوني؟ سريع للأعداء.
انتهى البعث.
قوات الأعداء.
ظهر جنود الأعداء.
حول.
تحركات للأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. تحركات للأعداء، هل تسمعوني؟ وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
لما تحركوا على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟
وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
حول.
ظهر جنود الأعداء. جنود الأعداء. تجهيزات جنود الأعداء على الأرض.
توجد
قوات الأعداء. جنود الأعداء.
شكرا. نحتاج اسعافات اوليه.
نحتاج إلى ذخيرة. نحتاج إلى تعزيزات. قوات الأعداء.
جنود الأعداء على الأرض. ظهر جنود الأعداء. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
نحتاج إلى بعض الأعداء.
تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟
جنود الأعداء على الأرض. تحركات للأعداء. تحركات للأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ فاتح الزميل.
طارت.
ظهر جنود الأعداء. اعطيوا المسعف. على الأرض. سريع للأعداء. وحدات حركات للأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ سريع للأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك. شوهد
مالك.
ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد جنود الأعداء. تحركات للأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ شوهد قوات الأعداء. شوهد جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد ظهر جنود الأعداء. جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. قوات الأعداء. شوهد جنود الأعداء. قوات الأعداء. سريع للأعداء. ستنفذ الذخيرة منا. التجهيزات صارت في موقعه. حول.
جاري البث.
شوهدت قوات جنود الأعداء. قوات الأعداء.
نطلب تعزيزات. حول. نطلب تعزيزات. حول. تعزيزات. هل تسمعوني؟ نحتاج إلى تعزيزات. نطلب تعزيزات. إلى تعزيزات. هل تسمعوني؟
قنبله.
ظهرت قوات
قوات الأعداء.
ألقيت قنبله.
ظهر جنود الأعداء.
تعرفوا على سرية الأعداء. تم
ظهر جنود الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد الموقع تحت السيطرة. انتهى.
تم التعرف على سبيل الأعداء. حول. تسمعوا لي؟ تم التعرف على
تجهيز
الأعداء. حول.
جاري.
شوهدت الأعداء.
صفقة جيدة. شكرا. تم التعرف على سرية الأعداء. حول.
شوهدت الأعداء. قناص من الأعداء. تحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ تم مسح المنطقة وهي تحت السيطرة. اعتذر، لقد أخطأت. شوهدت قوات ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. شوهدت قوات الأعداء. ظهر جنود الأعداء من الأعداء. شوهدت قوات ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد قناص من الأعداء.
آسف جدا.
تم الاستيلاء على إحدى النقاط.
طائرة بدون طيار.
وحدات الأعداء.
طائرة بدون طيار تعمل. بدأت البحث.
تم التعرف جيدا. شكرا لك.
توقف العمل جهاز تعقب الأقمار الاصطناعية.
قناص من الأعداء. تم الاستيلاء على إحدى النقاط. لا سيدي. تحركات الأعداء على هذا الموقع. وحدات الأعداء. شوهد من الأعداء. تم مسح جميع المناطق. الموقع تحت السيطرة. وحدات الأعداء تحرك الأعداء على الأرض.
جاري البث الحي من الطائرة بدون طيار.
شكرا، أدين لك بواحدة. شوهد قوات الأعداء. شوهد قوات الأعداء. شوهد وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
قوات الأعداء. حول.
تم مسح جميع المناطق. الموقع تحت السيطرة.
أين المسعف؟
تم الاستيلاء جنود الأعداء. تحركات الأعداء على الأرض. وحدات الأعداء تتحرك.
فقد أحد الرجال.
شكرا، أدين لك بواحدة. قناص من الأعداء.
قوات الأعداء. أين المسعف؟
فقدنا السيطرة على إحدى النقاط. شكرا أيها البطل. تحركات الأعداء. هل تسمعوني؟ تمت في المنطقة وهي تحت السيطرة. ظهر جنود الأعداء. شوهد جنود الأعداء. ذلك غير ممكن. شوهد قوات الأعداء. شوهد ظهر جنود قوات الأعداء.
تسمعوني؟ Hostiles on the ground.
Outpost is being overrun.
UAV transmitting on
Sniper! Enemy units on the move.
Supplies at your position.
Enemy troops! Sniper!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Sniper! Enemy forces. Over.
Position cleared
Enemy
and
troops
under
identified.
control.
Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Enemy troops on the ground. Medic! Medic! Enemy units on the move. Enemy units on the move. On the ground. Hostiles on the ground. Hostiles on the ground.
Frag grenade. Frag grenade.
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
UAV transmitting
Hostiles on the ground. Hostiles on the ground. Thanks, champ. Thanks. I owe you one.
We've lost control of an outpost.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy?
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy forces spotted.
Enemy troops! Enemy troops! Thanks. I owe you one. Medic! Hostiles on the ground. Hostile infantry spotted. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? We need ammo. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic! Enemy troops!
We're taking casualties, over.
Enemy infantry! Sniper! Hostiles on the ground!
Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy sniper!
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry.
Enemy units on the move! Enemy units on the move! Sorry! Sorry, Chief.
All clear.
Sorry, Chief.
Position under control.
Enemy
Out.
troops! Hostiles on the ground! Hostiles on the ground! No enemy troops! Enemy troops! Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostile infantry spotted. Over.
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
Enemy units on the move. You copy? Sorry.
Here.
Hostiles on the ground. Requesting ammunition. Over.
Frag grenade.
Enemy troops.
Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry.
Enemy force. Over.
Frag grenade.
UAV offline.
Enemy unit. Thanks, Ken. I owe you one.
Position cleared and under control.
UAV transmitting on this mark.
Hostile forces spotted. Over. We need support. Do you copy? Hostile forces spotted. Over. Medic!
Enemy.
UAV
I owe you one.
Enemy forces spotted. Enemy. Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile forces. Enemy forces. Over. Enemy activity. Do you forces, over. Enemy activity. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy running low on reinforcements.
Enemy forces,
Enemy
over.
sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Position under
Enemy
control.
sniper
Out.
spotted.
Enemy forces, over. Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Enemy activity. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Hostiles on the ground. Hostile infantry spotted. Over. Hostiles on the ground. Okay. Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy infantry.
Enemy troops on the ground. Enemy forces. Over.
Enemy infantry
Hostile
spotted.
forces.
Enemy infantry
Need
spotted.
ammo.
Enemy infantry
Enemy
spotted.
troops. Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? I owe you one. Enemy troop.
UAV is
Enemy troop.
transmission ending.
Hostiles on the ground. Enemy troops
Supplies
identified. Do
at
you
your
copy?
position.
UAV online and transmitting.
Enemy unit. Enemy troop. Enemy troop. Enemy troop.
Enemy infantry. Enemy infantry spotted. Enemy. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy forces spotted. Enemy sniper spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
Good deal, thanks.
Enemy unit on the move.
UAV is low on fuel. Transmission ending.
Enemy
Hostile
troop.
forces spotted.
Over.
Enemy sniper spotted.
Snipers
Enemy
on
sniper
perimeter.
spotted.
Hostiles on the ground.
UAV online and
Enemy troops identified. Do you copy? Medic. Enemy units on the move. Medic. Hostile sniper spotted. Over. Thanks, Jim. Sniper!
You're the finest squad I've ever set eyes on.
Hostiles on the ground.
Enemy infantry spotted.
Hostile sniper spotted. Over.
transmitting on this one.
Snipers on our perimeter.
Supplies at your position.
Hostile
Good deal,
forces
thanks.
spotted. Over. Enemy activity. Do you copy?
Sorry, man. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy sniper spotted. Enemy infantry spotted.
UAV is
Medic.
transmitting.